If you've been watching the show for a while, you know we've done a couple different pieces on the 5-seat CUV. But what if you need more than 5 seats? Typically, one of two things happens. You either jump to the big boys, the Suburbans, the Expeditions, the gas hogs, but man, they have space, or you buy a minivan. Many of you write to us and say, I have this many people, I have a family, I have to have more than 5 seats. Please don't make me buy a minivan. So if you've got 40 grand to spend, that's roughly what a minivan is going to cost you. Your option are these CUVs. These are 7-seat CUVs.
You have a lot of choices in this world. We've picked 3 of them. The first one is this, the Kia Telluride, and this is the fully loaded, full press car. It has everything you can possibly screw to the car, and it's $46,800. It's almost $47,000. We picked 2 others as well, the Pilot and the CX9.
You're watching Everyday Driver. We make a TV show, podcast, and YouTube channels dedicated to great cars, driving adventures, and helping you find a car you'll love.
Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a thing.
We're putting 3 together. They're just representatives of this market segment. They all have basically the same idea. It's a non-minivan, but it is unibody construction. It's not body on frame like the big boys. It doesn't have the full 4x4 running gear. Into this truck-looking, almost truck-like, I can't believe the space, 7-seat world comes Kia.
I like cars that actually have names. I'm not sure where you would have the press launch for the Pilot, and I'm not sure what you do with the CX9, but with the Telluride, you obviously come to Colorado and you drive to Telluride.
One of the other things that helps this car, though, is this is completely made in America. This is built in a plant in Georgia that has been building cars of some kind for years and has a very good track record on build quality.
I am very relaxed driving the Honda. We're in the 2019 Pilot. I am not going to have the mindset at all of an enthusiast driving experience with the Pilot, because it's irrelevant. This is at the end of the scale that is so usable. It is a toolbox, the home improvement toolbox.
Honda's made a Pilot for a while, and of course, like all of these, this is their big 7-seater alternative to the minivan. But Honda also makes, honestly, one of the very best minivans in the Honda Odyssey. So why are we here?
Honda claims 8 passengers, and it depends on your configuration. If you've got the bench at the second row, maybe, but the way it's configured now, I'm saying 6 on a good day. 7, the 7th person in the middle is not going to be having any fun whatsoever. But this is the Elite, fully loaded, $49,000.
Here we are in the Mazda CX9, and it is leading with styling first. Mazda's doing a great job right now, and all of their styling looking pretty good. This is a great-looking 7-seat car.
What they've done is bring their styling, their soul, their emotion to the design of this one too. Everybody has their own take, especially on size.
These are too soft and capable for families to really be a fun car to drive. But you still want them to be well sorted so they actually handle decently and don't feel like they're wallowing.
Everyday Driver is brought to you by Griot's Garage. Use the code EVERYDAY for 10% off your order.
Don't change the channel. Don't change the channel. I know you're thinking, where are the sports cars? Frankly, that's what I'm thinking. But the truth is, this 7-seater world, well, first off, they have a front-wheel drive architecture, 7 seats, no minivan doors, which is a pro and a con, and a little bit of truck styling, which is kind of what you're looking for.
Yes, it's boxy. Yes, it's pretty good size, but I see a lot of care in wrapping lines, the cuts down the hood. Pretty interesting. I like what the headlight shapes are doing. I like how they relate to the taillights. And I also like the rectangular with the radius corners that seems to be a theme around the car. It is kind of Range Rover-like.
You could say that Kia has taken its styling from German automakers, but then you have to think about the fact that they actually took their design department from those automakers. They're trying to do, like everybody, a corporate grille they can put on every car. That's hard. The result is this and the Kia Stinger both look very classy. They look more expensive than their price, and they still look like they're related without feeling like they had to force it.
I see the same thing going on in the interior. I'm seeing themes of BMW right here in the center. They have their own take on things. You start looking for a button, I guarantee you're gonna find it approximately in the area where you think it should be. That takes a lot of effort. There's an enormous amount of room in the back. The middle row slides forward and back.
We're big guys. I can sit behind myself with 4 or 5 inches in front of my knee. The third row, of course you have to fight with the second row for your legroom, but it also tilts backwards.
And the most space, cargo space behind the third row. That is something that changes the usability of this entirely. And then you start to look around. The plastic on the back of the driver and passenger seats, you know your kids are gonna be kicking that. And then up front, they're giving the adults something nice.
You sit in this cabin, you feel the materials, you look at what you have to interact with, and then you see a price of $46,000 loaded. I was expecting 50, 55 for this kind of quality in here. You see 46 and you go, how'd they do that? Or how is everybody else not doing it? The outside of the Pilot, I'm not fond of.
It's rather inoffensive. But what do you do with a toolbox on wheels? The designers will throw their best efforts at creating the best people mover and the most functional, interesting, despite the platform and despite what it is, they will throw all their effort at it.
The inexplicable thing is the sticker on the hood that actually has a carbon fiber texture to it. That is a sticker. That is a vinyl application. It looks ridiculous. And there's one on the side doors just in case you didn't get enough.
But here we have something that needs better design on the inside than the outside. There's a lot of features on here rethought the Honda way. For example, cup holders. Every cup holder is a dual cup holder, even the people in the back seats. The center console is so big you could fill it with ice, and it rivals most coolers. Things will disappear. It's like one of those backpacks that inexplicably swallow all of your stuff. That's what the Pilot is good at. And they've used all of these nooks and crannies to their benefit.
It is competing right alongside the Telluride here. They're kind of trading punches on which one is better for various bits of space. I prefer the front seats and second row in the Telluride. When I'm in here, I keep being reminded of Honda's excellent Odyssey. If the discussion here is why not get a minivan, from the interior perspective, you may as well get the minivan.
Look at this from a side view. Look at the surfaces. They're broad and tall and big. For the packaging of the people, it's pretty delightful.
Except for that enormous grille. I do think that the way that the nose on this car ends gives you the impression the front end is much larger than it actually is. Then the hatch swoops down enough that it actually compromises both your rear seat room and your rear cargo space.
Of all three SUVs, this one is the smallest inside, especially the back seat. So this is very much of a compromise in terms of maximizing passengers. But the driving position is kind of sporty. The seats are excellent. I love the materials. I love the build quality of Mazdas, and it translates, but nothing about this feels like a heavy car, and the instrument panel doesn't say big, blocky, huge styling where I'm in a truck and I'm driving a 7-seater.
I'm surprised by how high many of the things are in the CX9. The rear load area feels about 6 or 8 inches taller than the other two. The rear seats are high, tight, and awkward. This center console is enormous. It makes it feel like a large van. There's so much space between the gear shift lever and the actual floorboard.
So this one is fully done at $45,000, same as the Telluride. I mean, I think the Touring, the one down from the Grand Touring, would be fine for most families.
If you're shopping 7-seaters and what you need is 7 passengers and a bunch of gear, you actually can't shop this class. You have to shop the big boys. You have to go Expedition or Suburban or something that has a full normal cargo capacity behind the back bench. This is a step down from that. So your cargo capacity, once you lift up those back seats, it's not great. It's actually the size of your typical hatchback.
Everyday Driver is brought to you by Covercraft. Protection for whatever you drive.
A lot of the times when you get into these CUVs, you end up at the same place you'd be in a minivan, and that is, it has great utility, but you kind of loathe yourself as a driver. All of the SUVs in this piece, including this Kia, weigh 4,400 pounds or less. Now, if you think about it, a full-size Jeep Grand Cherokee weighs more than that. A Cayenne weighs more than that. Part of the reason for that is those are rear-wheel drive biased, full four-wheel drive running gear. All of these CUVs are front drive architecture, and they throw power to the rear. This Kia has a 3.8-liter V6. It is the biggest engine with the most power of all three of these CUVs. Now we're still dealing with just under 300 horsepower around that for torque, so it's not a huge powerhouse, but again, keep in mind, this is lighter than a lot of the 5-seat guys out there, and it's significantly lighter than the big Suburbans and Expeditions.
The Telluride has a sport mode, and you feel the difference in steering inputs. There's still a fair amount of body roll. After all, we're in a big car, but that's the amazing thing. I've been in smaller cars that feel bigger. It pulls it back into I'm kind of driving a small SUV, a car, which is kind of cool.
It feels almost as big as a Suburban in here when you close all the doors and put the family in. Then you drive it and realize it feels smaller than that. While we're speaking of Kia helpers, the cruise control is intelligent cruise control, and depending upon whether you talk to legal or marketing, it may or may not be autonomy. The lawyers are on the no camp, just so you know. The thing about this autonomous system is it's essentially a lane keep assist. It nudges you back. If you take your hands off the wheel, it bings at you to remind you that you're driving and you should have your hands on the wheel. I love Paul's description of the fact this is the sandwich eating assist, because it kind of is. You got through the drive-thru, you don't have to use your knee anymore. It's just enough to get the stuff to it. And of course, you can yell at the kids easier, but again, you can just yell at the kids with the kids, stop it, which helps as well. You don't have to turn around.
So the Pilot shares the chassis and a lot of its running gear with the Acura MDX. It has the same 3.5-liter V6, although it loses 10 horsepower, 280. The top trims get this 9-speed transmission, 9 gears. I think the paddles are here just to kind of remind you, you've got 9 gears to play with.
You can do 80 miles an hour on the freeway in fourth. I'm not good at math, but that leaves 5 gears left to just get you gas mileage. When you leave this in drive, it will shift right about 2,000 RPM until it gets to 9th gear. To hear anything but tire roar, you have to hit, this is an all-button transmission, you have to hit the D button, which becomes sport, and now I can downshift and wait, I have paddles? Why do I have paddles? There it is, okay. Now you hear the engine, which sounds terrible.
It doesn't have the driving dynamics going for it. So it kind of says, and I think Honda said, you know what? Forget that arena. The steering wheel turns the front wheels. It's novel concept. When you turn it, it points the car in the direction you want to go. That's about it.
No one's surprised there's body roll here. This is not a canyon carving vehicle. There's nothing catastrophic about the fact that a big 4,000-pound, 7-seat family SUV has body roll. That's to be expected, but it should compose itself better. The reset, the settle from the body roll is kind of a violent snapback, and to be honest, I'm disappointed by the ride. It's not uncomfortable by any means, but it doesn't feel supple. It doesn't absorb road bumps. It actually tells you every single bump you go over. I can feel all the road imperfections, but I don't feel like the car's doing a good job to just absorb them and move on.
So the Pilot and the Telluride both have V6s, naturally aspirated, both 3.5 liters, and they're both making 262 pound-feet of torque. This is interesting in this space because it's the torque that gets you moving. 310 pound-feet of torque. Nothing like a turbo.
For the size of this car versus the size of the engine, I'm a little surprised at what a good job it does of giving you the power you need. Now, the towing capacity is about half of the Kia Telluride, but I think most of the time when you drive it, you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the fact that whatever power you need, it has enough. It never overwhelms, it never surprises, but it has enough.
It's sort of like the CX9 is wanting you to go fast because of the bones, because of the company. They've just had to add all these seats. You can definitely tell the people who build this also build very lightweight, nimble sports cars.
Dynamics is where the CX9 really excels. It's the one of these three that is by far the most rewarding to drive. Now, it's not a sports car. It's not even a smaller 5-seat CUV. It is one of those cars that drives a little smaller than it looks. I think when you look at it for a while, two things strike you. First off, how do they pack 7 seats in there? And I'll be honest, not that well. But secondly, it is actually pretty large until you hustle it down a back road and you realize, you know, this little 4-cylinder is giving me a lot of power and these dynamics are reliable. You'd be amazed how many cars, especially as they get big, add a layer of insulation or confusion to every input. The CX9 doesn't do that. The brakes grip right at the top of the pedal. The steering, it has a nice weight to it, even though there's not a lot of tire information.
You're going to be the one having fun, but everybody else is going to be throwing up in the back. Maybe that's okay with you. Maybe you want the model that's the base model so you can hose it out later. But the point of this is for families who are actually looking and cannot have a sports car in their lives, is there anything remotely close to fun? Well, yes, it's the CX9.
Of course, when you buy a 7-seater, you're not buying for its amazing handling. You're buying because you need the space. Now, we're Americans, we're spoiled on space. We think about, well, I just like to have more space and 15 more cup holders, and I may not have 2 more kids, but you know what? I'd like space for 2 more kids. And as a result, we end up getting bigger and bigger cars.
There's a lot of competitors in this class. We could have picked just about any 3 for this comparison. This Telluride for families large and small, and for this price, I'm coming away incredibly impressed.
I came in expecting it to feel wallowy. It doesn't. Expecting it to feel enormous. It feels smaller than it looks. I think this is really compelling. Kia has made a 7-seater to compete with anybody out there. And this one is less than 50 grand if you go nuts and you check every single box.
If I had a big family, this is a top contender.
I would much rather drive this than a minivan. I prefer the looks, I prefer the dynamics, I prefer it honestly as a place to be.
Nothing is wrong with the Pilot, not a thing. You're not buying the Pilot for any enthusiast driving whatsoever. But if you're just road tripping, it just works. It feels solid, it feels expensive, it's beautifully machined, it's beautifully designed, and using every little tiny corner to make your life better.
This Honda Pilot is almost $50,000. It's $49,000 and extra. Yes, it's got plenty of utility. If you're only shopping utility, it's a victory. But I suspect the main reason you'd buy this over the Honda Odyssey minivan is just because your ride height is slightly better. You could maybe do a fire road, and you do have all-wheel drive. You'd be better off in the Odyssey. I hate to say it. We're having a conversation about minivan alternatives here, and in the case of the Honda Pilot, you should have just bought the minivan.
There's zero driving dynamics to be found. The other 2 have a hint of that, and that's why the Honda's third for me.
It is the most expensive and the least rewarding to drive. I just can't recommend it.
What's great is not only are all the cars in the Mazda lineup related from a stylistic perspective, they're related from a fun and driving perspective. That's what's interesting about the CX9, and it's very unexpected, and they were willing to compromise on size to be able to give that to you. In no way am I suggesting this is fast and fun and sporty, but for the category we're in, you can kind of hoonish. You can get a little tiny slice of hoon.
I'm quite impressed by the dynamics of the CX9. They've made a car that looks really good and is more dynamic than you expect for the market segment. This car never beats you up, and yet somehow it never feels loose and wallowy.
It's kind of like a little bit of whiskey in your coffee. It's not the full pour, it's just a splash.
It's the least successful at just being a utility vehicle. The Mazda doesn't give you as much as the others, and so while I prefer driving it, I don't think it can win.